Hey, good afternoon, world. Automotive Aftermarket, Carm Capriato, Town Hall Academy 237. Where would you rather be than right here, right now, every Friday at noon? Of course, you know we put this thing out as a podcast next Thursday. We're live on, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. You're here. Why? Because we offer wonderful aftermarket insights, instructional, informative, educational, and you have a chance to be a fly on the wall with, I have a hell of a panel today, and we're going to talk about supply chain interruptions, which every person I know in the entire automotive aftermarket has had an effect on, and so do the people that I have on with me. We're coming to you live from the Remarkable Results Radio podcast studio, and let's look at our panel. Great panel we have here. Bruce Roning is with us from DRiV. When you say drive to people, Bruce, do you say DRiV? How do you explain? I mean, this great merging of Federal Mogul and Tenneco, incredible company. And I even say the word drive to some of my friends, and they say who.
Yep.
So anyway, Tenneco, Wagner, Moog, those incredible brands. Group Vice President and General Manager of the Americas Aftermarket. Thanks for being here. Brian Norko is with us, Senior VP of Commercial Business Operations and GK Aftermarket Business. Hey, man. Thanks for being here. Malcolm Sissmore, VP
Carl.
Sales, Delphi Technologies of the Aftermarket. Malcolm, how you doing, man?
I am terrific. Thank you for having me on today.
Malcolm lives about 90 miles north of me up in, are you in TO right now, Toronto?
Just north of there, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Glad to have you. And Paul McCarthy, the AASA, the Automotive Aftermarket Suppliers Association president. How you doing, man?
Doing well. Thanks for having us, Carm.
So Paul and I talked and we said, hey, we've got to get together. I wanted to get together and do a supplier angle here on the supply chain. And he nicely helped me pull this great panel together. As I said, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and live on YouTube. By the way, if you're with us, we can see you. We can see your comments. If you have any questions of my guests, check in with your city. Give us a like, and or share this and watch it all over the weekend. Up on all the great social media sites. Remember, guys, we do this because we just love to be bringing all this great information. As I say, there isn't a topic. Well, there's topics we haven't covered, and I've got a really big one coming up next Friday that I will share with you. I want to talk about our great sponsor, Shopware. Do you remember the 1990s? Well, your shop management system does. Printing paper, shuffling clipboards, leaving voicemails. Grab a paper clip while you're at it. Pull some trouble codes. The check engine light is flashing and your profits are running lean. Modernize. Go to getshopware.com. Hey, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and thanks. So here's what we're doing next week, everyone. We're doing a show on addiction. This will be my second one. It's just so interesting to realize that this actually goes on in our real life, and it does affect the automotive aftermarket. Brian Holthe is with us, David Wagner, Matt Fonslow. Two of those guys are recovering addicts. And it's going to be a great show. We hope you show up for that. Okay, guys, let's go and do segment A. We're talking about supplier and supply chain. I reached out to some great service professional shop owners this week and got an earful. And Paul, so this is really timely to bring this up. You were telling me this is one of the biggest disruptions we've ever had since World War II.
Yes, this is the biggest supply chain disruption that we've had since World War II. I used to say this is the biggest since the Saudi oil crisis, but given the persistence of this is the biggest we've seen in almost a century. And it's coming from a good place. It's that demand that we've had and coming out of the pandemic, both for us and for other industries. But it's remarkable in that it's not just a single problem. It's not like if we fix this issue is solved. This is about a system that's overwhelmed. This is persistent.
Yeah, I think, Paul, that's an interesting point, because the thing that we try to
talk about within my team is we're standing on quicksand. Once we fix a problem, tomorrow morning I wake up to another one. And the day after that, I wake up to another one, right? Ningbo closed or is 50% capacity as of last week with no warning. So the problems keep shifting is the hardest thing to deal with.
Bruce, you said Nimbo. What does that mean?
There's a port. It's the second largest port in China that does exporting into the United States, into Long Beach, heavily into Long Beach. And they went to 50% capacity because of COVID restrictions last week with no warning.
Yeah, Bruce, and I'll tell you what doesn't change. I mean, we have the list of problems that we wake up to every morning, but what hasn't changed in the last 15, 16 months is demand. I mean, it's almost like this double header that we have going on. We have people that are working from home, and we have all the stimulus money out there. So the do-it-yourself market has just ballooned, and we're selling parts, and I'm sure other members of this call are the same. We're selling parts that fit 25, 30-year-old vehicles. And it's just driving our plants absolutely crazy because we haven't seen that demand in years. And the POS, the point of sale information, just keeps coming in. And remarkable, the average vehicle is a little over 12 years old, and we're selling parts for 25, 30, 35-year-old vehicles.
So a question, you said the DIY business. Of course, my audience is the do it for me. And that's exploding too, like never before. The good guys, the guys that have been really paying attention and growing a great business and building this, a much greater reputation for the professional service center. They're on fire. Anyone know if the stats are, the professional do it for me segments growing bigger than the DIY?
You can look at some of the publicly traded retail accounts like a Monroe, for example, and you can see that they're certainly the year-over-year comps are way up, but they're over 19 as well, right? So to me, that's you got certainly a splurge on vehicles driven right now that's going to pick up a little bit even more for us. But I totally looking at that older car park. The older car park is kind of getting older before the cars are going off the road. So becoming more and more of those out there, right? Mechanical fuel pumps. We've never sold as many mechanical fuel pumps, as ever before. And that demand may not be there next year, right? Like how many old small block Chevy engines need a fuel pump actually anymore out there? It's all been done. So we got to be cognizant of that it could be a shift as some of that stuff is the last product going on that vehicle because it is so old.
Oh, that's a great question, guys. I'm sorry, but I have to ask, who has an old parts warehouse of just old parts? And let's staff that because we need them.
Yeah, what's interesting is, to what Malcolm was saying, what's interesting in our Felpro business, our gasket business, right? We are seeing demand in the gasket business like we've never seen before. It's primarily going to professional service providers. And it's going on older vehicles. And what we're seeing is the value of the older vehicles is increasing. People are willing to put money into it. And so with Felpro as an example, the gasket business, it's incredible the demand we're seeing on head gaskets, oil pan gaskets, where people are basically saying the car's worth more now because of the shortage of new cars, and I'm going to go get it fixed. And they take it to the garage, and the demand is created across the gasket business. We are at an all-time high on a 100-year-old business from a demand standpoint with gaskets.
And they said the gasket business was gone because it all went silicone.
Yeah, we said the gasket business was dead. It was not a growth business for us.
Amazing, guys. One of the other things I know, Paul, that you wanted to cover was shipping. And so before we go into that, I have to ask this question. As I'm speaking to a whole bunch of guys this week about this upcoming show, getting their perspective, I'm hearing about it's costing so much more to take a container and get it shipped somewhere. I don't know if it's the truckers the big companies are adding, saying, hey, in one instance, it was going from $2,000 to $6,000. And I can't prove that, but that was told to me. But then I get the call back from the shop owner, and he goes, hey, there's something else we didn't think about. Getting the empties back over to China. Is that an issue, guys?
I'd love to get a container for $6,000. Do you know where they are available?
I was just sign me up for that car.
It's
Well,
like
wait a minute.
11 or 12
I'm
or
saying
14 or 16.
Malcolm, you mean just the delivery fee?
Yeah, that's like yeah, that's the amount of a container right now, especially with the Ningbo thing. I don't know, you guys know the numbers, Brian or Bruce, better, but I think the last thing I saw was $16,000 for bidding on a container.
Yeah,
we,
it's more than double. It's more than double
about a
last
month
year.
ago, it jumped to $20,000 per container.
Wait a minute, to get on the boat or to go from the dock to the warehouse?
The container fee to put the container on the boat.
Okay, all right. So there's a huge spiking cost, which is why we're wondering why rotors went up with the way they did. Bruce, you guys didn't raise rotor prices, did you?
Just a little bit, and that was really driven not only by logistics, but by steel. There's a shortage of steel around the world, and therefore you're seeing this huge increase in demand of steel. At the same time, there is limited capacity.
Same with the microchip shortage. When that starts coming back, people that get the chips first will be paying more for them. So that's also going to be another. It's already a disruptor just from supply. Wait till it starts coming back. It's not going to come back the same price, in my opinion.
Yeah, Carm, too. The other thing you got to remember too, it's just not vessel freight, container freight. There's a lot of air freight going on as well. I mean, having responsibility, but not only for the aftermarket, but for the OE. With the tightness of containers and getting through Long Beach, we have started moving some of our OE components through air freight more and more. We just can't afford to put one of our suppliers, OE manufacturers, and shutting down their line. So that freight has jumped up considerably as well.
Will OE pay you for the extra cost? Oh no.
And
it's all contractual.
Yep. And we're talking a lot about the ports and the shipping and just getting stuff, but there's issues with trucks too, getting the drivers, getting the access on trucks and getting things to move around the US and finding the workers. And so I think the key thing is for shops is you're seeing some inflation, obviously, coming through, but there's a reason for this. It's not a margin play that's happening here. It's about all these costs going up. And I think you're hearing it from folks. It's just the number of problems that we're seeing. It's just unbelievable. So we have all these shipping issues through the ports and in the country. We have the steel issues Bruce mentioned. There's aluminum issues. There's chemicals, resins, rubber, precious metal, chips that Malcolm mentioned. And then there's all these disruptions in the sub-supply base, just trying to get subcomponents. You can get an order in, but you're not going to see those components for 120 days. There's the demand spikes, the forecasting issues that people just mentioned with all the old cars. There's the inflation issues. The list just seems endless. And by the way, I didn't even mention what's probably the biggest issue, which is labor. Yeah. And I'll maybe tee that up for folks, just getting folks to work in our plants and our warehouses. There's almost 1 million open manufacturing jobs in the US right now. And vehicle manufacturers, the single largest manufacturing sector. So we're feeling that impact.
Thanks for bringing all that up. You dumped a lot on us there, Paul. Let's back up. That's what you do. You're so good at that. I would love to jump back just into the raw material piece and ask our guys here what kind of pressure you're feeling. And you brought up chemicals and oil. I mean, someone wrote to me today saying, I can't get 020. I can't find Shell Rotella tea anywhere. You guys, even though I know you're not in the oil business, but because you've got to be feeling the same impact on raw materials. Enlighten us.
Absolutely.
Starting with the box. Like the cost,
start
with the box. That's what everything has gone up, kind of things. You think with the box and the Amazon taking all the cardboard and everything. You're paying a premium wherever you go that way. Then you have pretty much every commodity is going up, even if it's just the labor component of that commodity coming to you. It's happening globally around there. So and frankly, it's actually an environment where the more we all understand everything's going up, whether it's your clothing, your groceries, or building supplies and all that, and auto parts, right? And it just kind of rolls its way through, which is good versus a resistance and people not wanting to do it, or, frankly, for the air freight and the extra container costs and that, we have to spend the money today and recover it on price increases in the future. So it's a pretty serious game that we play here because we don't have an excuse not to get the part there, no matter what, right? the car has to get repaired. And so we have to do all sorts of things. Like on our end, we've expanded our warehousing beyond what an accountant would say is the right flexible space, but we need that space to deal with the 25% fluctuations in supply chain. So we're doing things that wouldn't be some consulting company coming to tell you be a more efficient supply house. We're doing things to get parts where they need to be best we can.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue for us is steel. In the United States, there is a shortage of steel. It's just the way it is. Every single day, my purchasing teams focus 3/4 of their time just on sourcing of steel. Whatever we have to pay for it, we pay for it just to source it. And in China, you've now got that problem. It wasn't the problem in China up until earlier this year when China started shutting down steel mills. In their focus on clean air and their environments, they just started shutting down coal-fired steel mills. So you've seen steel right now, cold rolled is probably 3 times what it was even this time last year, if you can find it. And so it's a battle for us every single day to get that steel. We put stuff on airplanes, including steel. We're currently putting control arms on airplanes to get them in to make sure we have the parts where they need to be. But you can imagine the weight of a control arm and going, it's not like shipping a gasket on an airplane, it's a control arm. And so the MOOG business for us is, critically important from a steering and suspension standpoint. And we have no choice but to air freight things like that to make sure they're here.
I'm speechless. I really am. I'm sitting here trying to formulate in my mind what this all means to us. And issues like this, I mean, let's go back to 2008-9. It took a long time to recover from that debacle. Bruce, Brian, Malcolm, anything in sight as far as you guys are way connected? Can we, is this going to be here forever, or is it ever going to try to figure out how to straighten out? Because Bruce, you brought up that whole green thing. I mean, that's a big effect on our lives for longer than we ever expect.
Yeah, correct. And I was 8 and 9. It's interesting when this all started last March. Our CEO and I were together in 8 and 9 as well, and we said, "Hey, just pull the book off the shelf that we did in 8 and 9, and we'll be fine." And what we figured out was this isn't 8 and 9. This is completely different. And the root cause here obviously is COVID, right? Everybody started shutting down last March. And then you saw demand on this, starting with DIY, explode at the end of May and early June. And it continued all through the fall. Lots of people sitting at home, lots of money in their pockets because of the government subsidies, and they started working on their cars. And so we saw this huge increase in DIY. In about October, we saw DIFM start to do the same thing. And it exploded. And finally in January, we saw DIFM in our business anyways, on our hard parts, we saw DIFM pass DIY. To your point, the workshops are busy. There is the ones, we just finished a survey of 7,000 workshops in the United States. And the underlying tone that we got from them is they are as busy as they want to be. They can, to your point about let's not promise it an hour, it's going to take us a little while. They're as busy as they want to be as they manage their capacity with people working or not working in the availability of parts. So it's not 8 and 9. It really isn't because the whole supply chain around the world shut down, and now it's trying to continue to restart. And we are far more geographically dispersed than we were in 8 and 9. Where supply chains are much, much longer than they were in 8 and 9, and trying to get that restarted. What I found in my experience is it was a lot easier to shut this thing down than restart it.
I just wrote down these words: trying to restart to a new normal.
Yeah.
Whatever the hell that means.
And Carm, the problem is, and Paul mentioned it, is there's 1 million jobs open just in our industry. They announced yesterday, I think it was on Fox or CNBC, there's 10 million jobs open in the United States. There's not enough workers. So this is, like Bruce was saying, this is totally different from 8 and 9. We can't get people to come back to work, or what some people are doing, and this is the other spike that's going on, is there's a lot of retirements going on. So you can't get people back to work, and now you got people retirement. It's a double-edged sword on us. So how long is this going to last? Boy, I don't know. I mean, we keep hearing daily different stories on microchips because that's really affecting our OE business today. And you keep seeing every day, every week, different plants closing, shutting down for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I mean, when Ford takes their F-150 plant down for a month, they take the Explorer plant down for 2 weeks, you know there's issues.
I think Nissan just announced a 2-week delay, shutdown because of that. And
there was a good question, Crime, that came up. I saw through there about, with all these prices and everything coming, is there any type, and I will paraphrase, near sourcing going on?
Yeah.
Looking at, and certainly I got to tell you from the distributor side and the manufacturer side, absolutely. We certainly learned to diversify between Mexico and China and flex it back and forth due to necessity. And now we have a kind of a nice thing where wherever we can get the product soonest, basically right now, we'll choose either spot. So that's something that will probably remain in place. You're going to remember the whole tariff thing is still going on, right, from China. And that's also making people diversify a little bit, but the container issue from whether it's Turkey or China is the same. Cost of containers and availability, like that type of stuff is definitely happening. One of the things is to watch the container the global container amounts out there, and if they continue to decline the amount of containers that are available. And it's sort of, I think, a little bit by design, as me talking of the container companies to, like the oil and people, reduce the production, raise the price.
If I can add some color on that one, Kyle,
sure.
is because we've been talking with our members about that issue a lot. Nearshoring is definitely growing. There's an appetite among customers to have less supply chain risk, just given all that we've experienced the last couple of years. There's even a few who are willing to say, okay, we know it's going to cost a little bit more to nearshore and have less supply chain risk. I still think we're struggling to get that support. But the reality is, and Brian said it, I talk to members every day who'd like to increase their U.S. production and certainly their nearshoring production, and they can't do it because they can't get workers. We can't produce what we'd like to at existing levels in the U.S. We just can't get the workers in the plants. We can't get the workers to distribute this facility. Obviously, there's things we need to do to increase U.S. competitiveness. I mean, some of this is being driven by the tariffs, the steel issue. We got steel tariffs that are absolutely contributing to the challenges we're seeing there. So there's some government action. And we hear from members we'd love government to get a little bit more out of the way here. But nonetheless, until we increase some of the U.S. competitiveness, until we have people who will work in our facilities, there's only so much more we can bring back to these shores.
Wow, guys, hold 1 minute. Let's get ready to do segment B. My mind feels like a piece of Swiss cheese right now because I'm hoping to find answers, and I don't think there are many. But enlightenment, boy, am I getting enlightenment. Hey, ring, ring, it's the 2020s calling, and they're telling you it's time for an upgrade. Head on over to the internet and type in getshopware.com. These friendly folks, good friends of mine, are excited to meet you and share all that cloud-based shop management has to offer on the web at getshopware.com. Hey guys, Kevin Eckler, he did make a statement here with bulk of scrap materials. He was really talking about sending the stuff back over, but then I just realized why you wouldn't, because you have to pay the tariff to get it back, right? Would that be true? If you sent product, raw materials over to China and it had to come back, maybe you paid more for it here and then you had to pay a tariff to get it back? Is that possible?
If it came back as a tariffed item, a finished goods item, yeah, 100%.
Okay.
It's got to be finished. Yep.
And the thing, Paul, you were rocking some great ideas about nearshoring. And in fact, I've been around a long time. I never heard that. But again, it takes me to hang out with you to realize that nearshoring is to make it here, right? Is that what it means?
Right.
Or does that mean Mexico or Canada too? Does that what it means?
Here or close by. So here it could be Mexico, Canada. They're
Okay.
pretty integrated supply chains, but here is definitely an ambition for our.
So you can't find the labor, but you're paying $20,000, Bruce, to bring a container over. I guess if you started to do the math, you would realize, okay, well, we've got to make it here. It's going to cost us a little bit more, but the world is absorbing these price increases through, we're having to pass it on. We just cannot, especially if you're going to absorb OE, right?
Yeah.
Is it possible that we have to figure, if we can solve the labor problem, then a lot of this stuff will work?
Yeah, we are expanding, and we've talked with Paul about this, but we are expanding our current capacity inside our North American plants. And I use the the broader term of North America, Mexico, United States, and Canada, where we started a year and a half ago as this thing began on the plans of expanding capacity here, more vertical integration, which means I'm building more of my own components as opposed to sourcing them, and shortening that supply chain. That is absolutely the plan we have. In our Monroe business, shock and strut business in Arkansas, we've resourced about 1,500 parts in the last 10 months that we were having manufactured, finished goods or components that we were having manufactured outside of North America are now being done in our plant in Arkansas. So it absolutely is what we're doing to shorten the supply chain and make sure we can get some cost avoidance on those container fees, and be able to manufacture in the United States.
Bruce, what capacity are you in Arkansas? I mean, do you need people?
Oh yeah, we're right. It's interesting. We are Paragold for us in Arkansas builds about somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 million shocks and struts a month. And up until about a month ago, we were short about 150 people. And one of the questions I saw pop up on the screen there is what's stopping people from coming back to work? We went from being short 150 people to being completely full from a labor standpoint the day the state of Arkansas stopped the federal unemployment subsidy. That stopped on a Thursday. On that Friday, we had 350 people in our parking lot wanting to go to work. And we ended up filling up the entire facility. Now, other facilities like Skokie, Illinois, where our Felpro plant, or our Walker plant in Virginia, we are still short probably 200 or 300 people in each one of those facilities. So as we look to expand capacity in those facilities, we have to look to the labor shortage and the labor inflation. There's been significant inflation in the hourly workforce as everybody is looking for the same people.
I'm mind blown. Clint White, I love what he says, Joe. He's talking to Joe Hansen. It's the new virus of stimulustis make it really hard to work when money just shows up in your account. So the proof is if we can get this stopped. Wait a minute. Didn't I see some stimulus package that says you never have to work? We're going to educate you and you could sit home for the rest of your life and earn 50 grand. Was I reading that somewhere, or was that it was a dream that came to me, maybe?
No, it was a dream, Carm.
No, that's Canada.
I'm hoping it's a dream.
That happens in Canada.
Oh, that's it. Oh, Malcolm, that's right. You guys got free healthcare and everything up there, right? And the borders are still closed. Here's a comment from Greg Buckley. Is there any thought to what manufacturers continue to do in trying to find the best cost country? I feel that that was a start of our erosion of quality, capacity, and output, in his humble opinion. What do you think about that, guys?
Yeah, Carm, I mean, we're in best cost countries right now. The majority of our product for the aftermarket comes from BCC. The problem that we have Monday, that's the last report that I got, I had 26 containers sitting outside of Long Beach. So just an average container for me is about 750,000 parts. So I got almost 10 million pieces I can't get my hands on right now because of delays. So we're coming in from BCC, but the challenge is still going to be that freight issue coming across the pond. Bruce mentioned it earlier, but Ningbo, one of the ports over there, just shut down because of COVID. I think they just shut down for the week, Bruce. I think they're coming back. They're going to evaluate next week, but that takes containers out, and now they're going to stockpile even more in terms of being able to get in, get filled, and then get out again. So it's a challenge even when you're doing business in the BCC.
Guys, let's address the quality issue. That was one of the biggest things that my friends in the industry this week told me. I don't know how to start that dialogue because you guys are from major brands with all kinds of integrity of quality, yet some of the products that you have at all in the entire industry, the guys aren't happy with.
I'll step into that one and talk about a little bit of evolution of how this happened. Is the proliferation of competitors with the same part available, especially when they're getting made in low-cost countries and show up over here, and the retailers say, hey, wow, I can buy that and put it in a box. I can make myself an extra 25% margin, and next thing you know, to remain competitive, and it's not exclusive auto parts, you have to go get them there, and then you create this extra quality layer of stuff you have to do. You have to work extra hard at getting it done, and yet you still have people selling a part number and a price that you're competing with on the internet or whatever it is out there. And frankly, that's what's driven a lot of this to and certainly a group on here to maintain our quality standards that the customers expect when they see our brands. It's not easy to do that in a low cost country, right? You have to, you really, and materials cost kind of the same. So you're looking at some labor type of thing, and now add on all the disruption. But you have powerful private label brand houses out there that kind of, if you want to sell your product in a market where you have competitors with same applications and a massive VIO, that's what you're going to have to do.
Yeah, I think Malcolm, you're right. There's a lot of me also or me too, where it's a private label brand that's manufactured in whatever country. In my case, it comes in as a competitor against Monroe on shocks and struts. It's not the same quality as my product line. In fact, we started a campaign about a year ago on this, where we said if it doesn't say Monroe on the box, it's not, because we don't manufacture private label with our shocks and struts. We only manufacture Monroe brand. And so if it doesn't say Monroe on the box, regardless of what the sales guy tells you or anybody else tells you, it's not Monroe. And therefore, we have a battle to fight here around quality and the acceptance of Me Too, and making sure that what you are getting in the box is what you are expecting.
Yeah, Bruce, that's a good point, Bruce. I mean, it's the product categories that NGK and spark plugs and NTK technical sensors play in. We haven't had the commoditization that some of the other product lines have experienced. So from our standpoint, whether it comes from West Virginia, one of our OE plants, or it comes from Thailand, which is another OE plant, it's NGK on the spark plug, it's NTK on the O2 sensor, and it's OE quality. So we're fortunate in that regards. But like Bruce is saying, if it doesn't say NGK on the spark plug or NTK on the O2 sensor or NGK on the ignition coil, it's not an NGK or NTK product.
Yeah, and if I can add a little bit of cross-industry perspective on this, well, first, we know how much quality matters for the shop. I mean, you guys need that customer satisfaction. You can't have comebacks, especially now when we're so busy. And I think I can sum it by saying that the brands that you have long trusted for quality are still the brands to trust. What we've heard from our members is, even though we have this unprecedented demand, we're getting more parts out the door by a large margin than we ever have. Those companies are still dedicated that anything they're putting their brand on has that quality. Now, we are seeing some players in the marketplace who are just trying to get supply from wherever they can. We see some manufacturers who are just trying to supply whatever they can to meet demand. So there is this heightened concern about quality across the industry. And I think the answer is trust the brands that you've long trusted to make sure you get those quality parts you need.
Thank you, Clint, for summarizing this. Put that back up, Tracy. He just said, have we lost pride of quality in exchange for volume and competitive sales stuff? I think he heard that from all of you. If there's a Me Too movement, let me try to summarize
who's we in that question there, right? Because
exactly.
Because the other thing with, there's shops out there buying the stuff, right? There's shops out there saying that that we know, and there's distributors saying, hey, my value proposition, I'm cheaper. Right, and you read these stats that come out of private label taking off over certain areas and that type of stuff and taking over like that, and you think about the brands on the here today, right? Yeah. Brands that have been around for tens and 20s and hundreds of years, kind of thing, and it's kind of like a consumer choice, right? There is some of this is being pulled from the shop level, saying I'm wanting to buy a less expensive part, And I would say the majority of the top end shops out there don't think that way. They want the best quality part on time.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Very interesting can of worms and a very interesting dialogue. And I think what I just heard you say, that the market has put that kind of pressure on you guys. And have if you're looking at the competitive arena that you're in, guys, and you see all these other Me Too's come in, I mean, you're not sitting down saying, how could we build this widget so that we can not have to raise prices, or that we, I have a supplier who wants a private label part in their box and they're willing to let me make it. Does that help? Does that sacrifice the brand value that you have by doing any kind of compromising? I'm trying to use kind words here, and I don't want to go into a deep hole, but I just would love some perspective.
I don't think there's any compromise in quality. So, and so that's sort of like I'll collectively talk about you guys, and that's our brand guarantee to the technician, that it will be the highest quality part in that box, right? And then we control all that, and that's why the name's on the outside of the box, to show that, right? And so I think that you have the private label type of that, and there's an assumption, because the people that are distributing them are first class companies, and they'll stand behind their product and stuff like that. And people will say, you know what, it's a great, I'll take the risk on that. I'll try it out anyway, until they get into it doesn't quite work the way it's supposed to work, whatever the case may be. So back to your comment, I think the market has pulled a little bit that way, but I'd say from your conversations, Carm, this week with shops, is quality was their biggest conversation. Yep. We need to keep pushing that one, because it's our brand value proposition out there is the quality confidence.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
it's tied. Sorry, it's tied to our brands, right? I have 41 brands in my business. 16 of those are over 100 years old. I'm not going to risk that brand equity on something like poor quality or cutting a corner. I'm going to build the highest quality product I can to OE standards, meet or exceed the safety and performance requirements, and then put my brand on it. And when you talk about Monroe, Wagner, Walker, Felpro, those are all over 100 years old. Most of my competitors weren't in business 10 years ago. And my brands are over 100 years old. So I'm not going to sacrifice quality and that brand equity.
Yeah, and I'll just throw out one other thing. I think we should all consider, if you decide to get a part that is a lower price, you're putting the whole independent aftermarket and this whole thing we built over a century at risk, because our whole proposition is you can trust the independent shop, and we can get you that quality. We can provide that quality that you want, as good or better than a dealer or anywhere else. And whenever somebody gets a cheaper part and somebody has a bad experience, it ruins it for all of us. And they come back and they say that. So just keep that in mind. I throw out, somebody asked, how do I know it's a good part? I throw out, there's the manufacturers have a website called knowyourparts.com, which lists some of those quality brands that you can trust, the brands that are dedicated to quality, including these folks, and also has some great training info there too.
Hey guys, I want to come back and do segment C here one more time for Shopware. Hey, I have a question for you. What do WorldPack, Mitchell 1, Kukui, and QuickBooks have in common? Well, they work with Shopware, connecting the aftermarket together. Shopware's all-in-one platform maximizes shop efficiency and delivers customer satisfaction without compromise. Get the total shop management software package trusted across our industry on the web at getshopware.com. Thank God we didn't sugarcoat anything here today. I'm not sure some of my friends out there thought we maybe have gone deep enough, but this was very interesting. I learned so much. I would love in this last segment C to talk about the T word, transistors. And how much is that affecting Malcolm? I know for sure you guys. I mean, I remember being in the Delphi booth, and Dave Hobbs is passing all these ADAS pieces of equipment around. I mean, it's just nothing but transistors. What's going on with how it's affecting Delphi?
talking about the chip shortages for that
Yes,
type of,
yes.
yeah. So it's kind of got, sometimes it works out okay when the OE shut down and we can have access to some of the stuff that they're not using. That sometimes works out. It's also generated a ton of innovation on our side, where we had been new on the aftermarket. We've had to go to reman on some stuff, even just some of the electronic diesel injectors where it was new, and then we managed to reman them out of necessity. So that's really been helpful. But certainly airbag sensors and different things like that are well delayed right now, because of the chip shortage. And when it comes through, we really don't know. Especially as you start looking at your 2022 budget planning, do you plan for a chip shortage, or don't you? Do you plan for the container prices to come down, or don't you?
Wow, what a challenge. Well, if you don't plan for the containers to come down and they do, then you get a bonus.
That's a great way to think. That's a great way to think. Can you please be my customer?
Yeah.
It makes up for the catch up now.
Yeah.
They're going to pick up the phone and say, Malcolm, containers went down, lower my price. I mean,
That's okay. My wages went up. It's covered.
Oh my God, that is great. But is OE going to get the first crack at this stuff when they start making more?
I guess I don't know, assumptions. Everybody's going to do their own planning. People should be able to work within that. I assume we're going to work within it and keep everybody happy, because they're both our most important customers.
Yeah, and I think the aftermarket has actually done a better job of supply and keeping up supply, because we are so nimble and more innovative, as Malcolm mentioned, than we've seen on the OE side. I think we've done a better job. But it comes back to your point, Carm, of how long is this going to last? And this supply chain disruption, we've had this joke that among our members, we poll them, we ask them how long it's going to last, and it's been a rolling 2 quarters of, hey, in a couple quarters, it'll get better. Well, that's what we said at the beginning. We're still saying it now, and we're still dealing with it. So this may be with us for a while. But the flip side, and this is a positive side maybe for the shops, Bruce said it earlier, the shops are as busy as they want to be. How long will we see this level of demand that's supporting all of us? And I'll just throw out a couple of stats. We recently released our joint channel forecast that AASA does with our friends at ACA. And it said that this year we're expecting over 11% growth in end consumer spending on repair and maintenance versus last year, which is just amazing for our boring, slow growth industry. And based on the numbers we've seen, that's probably on the low side. Next year, over 5% growth. And what may be even more impressive is if you look out to 2023, 2024, the growth rate slows, but they're still projecting higher than what was our trend growth pre-pandemic. Yeah. And this is speaking to this lifestyle change, this culture shift that we've seen in the US about where people want to live and how they want to live coming out of the pandemic. And we think it's really supportive for automobility in the aftermarket. You see it in the used car prices. You see it in some of these house prices. People want bigger houses. They want to live in different places. And all these lifestyles we want now, you require that car or that second, third, or fourth car. And we think this is really positive for long-term demand for shops and for the aftermarket.
It's an exciting number to think about, and I believe our service industry is going to prove those numbers are low, because so many of them are on fire and expanding, growing better as leaders, offering much greater services and relationships to their customers, because I'm connected to them. I hear that every day. Let's just take one final question and a comment, or it is a question from Greg. What is the sentiment of Wall Street on private equity firms that control the purses of organizations such as you guys on what the market is like and how they plan to help correct it, or will they still be interested in just counting beans? Thank you, Greg. Any comment, guys?
I'll throw a comment out. They're always going to be counting beans. You always have metrics to hit as a public company. However, and I'll tell you, Borg Warner made the announcement that 45% of our production by 2030 would be full electric vehicle components, right? Big shift from under 5%. So it's a big push that way. And that certainly has, in some cases, a different investor that is looking at the company, right? That's somebody wanting to invest in a company that is unsustainable and that type of thing. So I would say that to Greg's question there, yeah, there is a shift that way when you look at a company and who the investors are in it and how it goes. But bean counting is very real. Like if you're not growing, not showing margin, all that kind of stuff, you'll get hammered.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
the exciting.
go
Sorry,
ahead,
Paul.
Bruce.
I was going to say the exciting part here, Carm, is that what Paul said about the growth and the attraction of the investor. You know, we are a public company, right? I am still internally, I am still Tenneco. We are still a publicly traded company, and so we're always going to be focused on the financial side of it because that's what you do when you're, especially when you're a publicly traded company. But the excitement that is being driven by the growth opportunity and the technology opportunity as we move more and more into the EV and HEV. From a technology standpoint, is really exciting. I think it's attracting an investment core that wasn't there before in the, to use Paul's word, just kind of the quiet, you know, automotive aftermarket business. The growth and the technology are exciting people.
Yeah, and you take a company like NGK, our investors have set aside $500 million to go and invest in technologies for the EVs. If you take a look at NGK spark plugs, I mean, everyone's talking about peak out at 2030, 2028. But we're excited and our employees are excited because of the amount of money that we've set aside to invest in technologies to help the EV business out. And that's what we're looking forward to, as well as maintain our current business. And we're still investing in capital there because we're picking up share because the spark plug business has become more technical with iridium and platinum and high ignitability spark plugs. Those players are getting smaller and smaller that can play in there. So we're trying to balance both out for our investors, but looking at the long-term growth of EVs.
Let me try to put a different twist on Greg's question. Malcolm, Brian, Bruce, when you do your quarterly review to your shareholders, which is always so much fun, and then the next day you start worrying about the next quarter. What kind of questions are you getting as it comes to labor, supply, China? Is there some relief by saying, listen, guys, we really do care about share value. We do really care about the profit of our company, but please get up and get over this. We want you to be here, you know, in the next 5 years. Are you getting that message?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting it, Carm. I mean, the good thing is everybody knows what the problem is. For us on the OE side, it's microchips. So we can't predict when we're going to start getting all the microchips or when Ford and GM, Chrysler, and Honda are going to start getting the microchips. But we know that business will come back. Fortunately, because of the strong demand that we're seeing in the aftermarket, that's really helping our business. So it's kind of OE's down, OES, aftermarket's up. So that's helping us get through the next quarter. But and we're really fortunate, and Bruce mentioned it. I mean, we're looking to September to start getting labor back in our plants. Illinois and West Virginia, we're hearing that the stimulus is going to stop. So we know those people that are sitting on their couches making a lot of money, doing nothing, are hopefully going to come back and start going back into the service professionals and start helping the supply chains out. So we're looking forward to that.
And I think, Carm, what's interesting, just to continue with that dialogue, yeah, I mean, the first question I get every single day is, when is this going to end? When are you going to get ahead of this curve? And, you know, the people that work for me and my teams in the Americas business, every single day, that's what we're focused on, is getting ahead of the curve, the demand curve, right? But there's also a recognition that we need to take care of the end user of our product. You know, the service professional that's actually putting the part on the car and making sure we're doing what we need to do. That's why all of us talk about putting parts on airplanes, expediting freight out of Long Beach, repatriating manufacturing capabilities into the United States. It's all done to make sure that part is where it belongs at the service provider when they need it.
I don't know about you guys, but I thought that was a great ending. Thank you. Great summary, Bruce. Paul, do you have a final comment for us at all?
I'll just mention, I think Bruce hit the nail on the head. I mean, I hope you heard it all throughout this, that the important thing is the shop. It's you guys actually getting the end customer their vehicle so it can run. And that's where the focus is of of the entire supply base. And one thing I'll throw out, a couple people mentioned this about electrification. I throw out driver assist, all this new technology coming for shops. We think this is more opportunity than threat for the aftermarket for quite a few years to come. And if it's not on your radar, I'd throw it out there. I'll just mention Apex. Carm, you're very involved in this.
Yep.
A lot of training, a lot of helping shops be ahead of the curve,
Yeah.
and be trained, see demonstrated at Joe's Garage how we can repair those driver assist, those ADAS systems, those electrified vehicles. Because yes, we can repair them. Yes, they are an opportunity. And yes, the independent shop is and can do and serve that market well.
Wow. Thank you so much, Paul McCarthy, AASA President, Bruce Roning from DRiV, Group Vice President and General Manager of the Americas, and Brian Norko, Senior Vice President, Commercial Business Operations, NGK Aftermarket, and Malcolm Sissmore, VP Sales, Delphi Technologies. Guys, off the charts. Thank you. Appreciate this. You nailed it. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Carm. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Carm.